This is Mitch Worden, going to critique the TPACK lesson plan draft of Maddie. I'm going to clear away first the language and completion aspects of the rubric. I have yet to do physical written critique yet, so I'll be a bit more in depth when I address these. I really do want to say that it'd be very important to go through, read every sentence here, because there are a lot of very simple, basic capitalization, punctuation, spacing errors that ordinarily would not happen if you're really focused on what's going on. I feel like those are very easy fixes. You can clear those out right away. If you go through, look over it once, you'll spot the majority of them immediately. I will say, just by looking at it, I've read through it a few times, but outward appearances, it does not give off the aesthetic of completion. It definitely could benefit from formatting. A lot of this bullet point title, all seems to blend into each other. What helps is if you bold or underline topics, you can really help point to what's important or when there's going to be a new train of thought, rather than this structure here where everything doesn't really seem to stand out. It really helps to provide emphasis so that you can really see, like, oh, we're going to talk about this now, rather than this constant train of thought where it's just like boom, 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 boom. The only things that are really bolded are these down here, as well as a procedure here, and it looks out of place considering everything else is put in the normal text. I would definitely make sure that there's a bit more variety there. That way, when you present it, it not only has good content, but it appears good as well. It looks more professional. I will say, in terms of the standards as well, so we're going to go through that then. It was honestly hard for me to find them because I expected them to be at the top here with the others, but the pedagogy, the outcomes, that sort of thing seem to be kind of mixed in here. That goes in terms of my critique on formatting as well. I feel like it should be a bit more organized in terms of what's coming next, what I'm going to read, rather than sort of digging through. And because they're not highlighted at all, I couldn't really pick them out immediately. So this definitely ties in with the lesson about learning about the presidents. I do like the concept of how they're going to have to guess regarding who the student is presenting. I believe this all comes into play. They're going to be making a Prezi, and they're going to be researching into their randomly assigned president through the hat drawing. I have no complaints with the technology there. I feel like it's implemented well. I feel like the teacher demonstrates it and the students can then use it. However, I feel like it needs to be a bit more explicit. I feel like you could write a lot more here, add much more in terms of what exactly is going on, how the teacher does it, all the things about the lesson. At the moment, it seems very vague. It seems like there's a lot lacking, especially stuff like the practices down here, the guided independent practices. This is just a sentence or two. The rational statement at the end, which is supposed to wrap up all of the pedagogy, Bloom's taxonomy. It feels more like you mentioned them, but you didn't actually go into depth about how they come into play within the lesson, about what you've written about, what the students are going to do, the objective, how it addresses these levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Yes, they could address these, but how do they? How are you going to accomplish that? Make sure that that's what the rational statement is all supposed to be for. And the pedagogy up here, it's hard to find again. There it is. How does this come into play? Like, make whoever is reading this understand why you chose that and how it's going to be used in the contents of this lesson. I feel like it has a good premise, but there are just a lot of things that can be touched up. Like I said, the language, mechanics, completeness, it's definitely going to need some touching up and improvement there. I think the computer standards and all of that are appropriate, and the technology is appropriate, but I really think that why it's being used, how it's being used, requires a lot more elaboration. It's not that it's not there, but it's definitely insufficient. I definitely feel like that can be done with just another read through, going back to what the plan is and thinking things over. I do like the premise. I feel like you're onto something here, but you just really need to make sure that everything is in place while you're going forward to the final draft stage. So just to conclude, I would for sure invest time into formatting this much better, so it's easier to locate things, much more organized, compiled better in a more professional manner, and certainly expand on other aspects, especially the rationale statement at the bottom here. So I hope this helps, and I hope to see the finished product.